Happy Saturday, Risers. Saagar and I are back to take another look at some of our favorite moments from the week.
And what a week it was with the New Hampshire primary and other political fare. This time, we finally had a resolution to a contest.
Amazing.
In case you hadn't heard, Bernie won that contest. Then almost all the candidates moved on to Nevada, where the next Democratic caucus is going to be, except, of course, Andrew Yang and Deval Patrick. So, during the busy campaign week, friends of the show, Michael Starr Hopkins and Marshall Kosloff, they spoke to generational divide amongst black voters. Let's take a listen.
What are the generational dynamics? Because this is a very much a generational divide within the whole race has really had a great generational divide, but in particular within the black community.
Yeah, and we talked about this. You know, my grandmother is someone who was a Biden supporter, and all of her friends were Biden supporters. And as Biden's support has gone down, she's now a Bloomberg supporter, and all her friends are Bloomberg supporters, not because they love Bloomberg, but because they want to beat Trump. I mean, she was the first integrated class in D.C. And so to see, you know, the first black president and now to go to Trump, there's a real fear among her and her peers that we're swinging the pendulum back.
That was an interesting conversation. I thought it was interesting to bring this to the viewers. I know a lot of viewers were not happy with that, but it's important to understand how people of races actually react to these things. Like, an older black population does not respond the way that upper middle class white people do, or even younger black voters, and the way that they think about race and about class. So I think that that was an important conversation. It reminds me, Lee Fang actually took a lot of heat. He's a friend over at The Intercept, from a New York Times reporter who was calling basically his take trash when he said that Michael Bloomberg has really revealed that money and class interests are what drive our politics rather than postmodern identity politics. Obviously, I mean, I think everybody knows we probably agree with Lee, but that is the Bloomberg phenomenon. It demonstrates that. Same with the Biden phenomenon.
Well, and people get confused too, not our viewers, but a lot of people out there get confused about trying to understand why a population is supporting someone and saying that you're okay with those policies. Right? These are two very different things. And
that's
one
such
of the
a good point.
ethos of our show is very much like respecting voters and the choices that they make, and not condemning them, but rather trying to understand why you would rationally come to this place. Now, for me with Bloomberg, the real question is, he's been pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into states where no one else is basically competing. It has upped him in the polls some. He's still not winning in any poll, except we did see one in Florida where he was up at the top. But I wonder how solid or soft that support is, because what we saw with Biden is ultimately it crumbled very quickly. Is it the same thing here where, you know, if he does get on the debate stage and is challenged, or if there's more negative coverage of him in the media, does that change things? If they see, you know, Bernie Sanders having momentum coming out of the first 4 early states, does that change the ball game? We just don't know at this point, but I think it's such an interesting phenomenon to understand and to try to respect the voters who are gravitating towards him and understand what their motivations
Humans are complex, and we should always remember that.
Of course. During our live coverage of the New Hampshire primary, D.C. Bureau Chief from The Intercept, Ryan Grimm, talked about Andrew Yang bowing out of the presidential race. He also touched on Yang's uniqueness and authenticity as a candidate.
But I also think what Yang did tonight shows that what a lot of people suspected about him, his fans suspected about him, but what a lot of his cynics didn't believe, is that he's a fundamentally decent human being.
He is.
Because he has the kind of email list and the kind of following that if he felt like being a famous politician and traveling the country on other people's money and appearing on television and continuing to go on to debates, he could have done so for another several weeks.
Certainly.
And a lot of people would have just cynically said, you know what, this is a fun ride. I love having people hang on my every word. I'm just going to keep doing this. But he said, you know what, I tried, I had a theory, didn't pan out, and I'm not going to, you know, sucker people into giving me millions of dollars when I know personally that I can't win.
From that perspective, what a decent, you know,
because he could have done that if he
wanted. Absolutely. And many would have.
So many. That's the important thing to me. You know, I was comparing that. Elizabeth Warren put out this video where she was bragging about how some student came up to her and was like, I only have $6 left in my bank account, and I'm giving you $3 so that you can keep going. She's like, I have to fight for that. And I compared that to Andrew Yang's candidacy, where Zach Grumman, his campaign manager, said, we cannot in good conscience take the Yang gang's money and fly all around the country on their dime when we don't think we have a viable path forward. You compare those two things, and Ryan is right. a decent human being.
That's exactly right. And look, I see the tweets online right now that are like, he could still get back in the race. I mean, they would have been with him all the way. And it's very easy when you're surrounded by crowds and enthusiasm and you're riding that and you believe what you see around you, which is this wave. And it's very easy to convince yourself that maybe in the next state it'll come together.
Right.
Maybe in the next state it'll come together. It's very easy to delude yourself in that way. But he took a rational look at things and said, look, we made our case, we changed the window, we made history here, and now it's time to move forward in a different way. And you have to respect not only the fundamental decency and respect that he has for his base and the people that supported him, but also just his ability to sort of clearly see reality as it exists.
Right, exactly. Finally, surrogate for Senator Elizabeth Warren made the case for Warren presidency instead of Bernie Sanders. Take a listen.
Which is, as someone who interviews candidates all the time, I'm always actually kind of confounded a little bit why some people think it's compelling to say that they are consistently fighting for the same exact thing for 30 years, when the end of that sentence is and losing, right? Elizabeth Warren came to Washington, D.C. just several years ago with one top priority, and that was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. She was told it couldn't be done. She put together a coalition on the outside, on the inside. She fought for it, and it became the crown jewel of Wall Street reform. And that was before she was even a senator. And she's done more things like that since then. So I think that's a case she needs to advance. Now, look, I love Bernie Sanders' values. I would just say to most Bernie Sanders voters, if you agree with those values, your best bet to actually get them done is Elizabeth Warren.
It's pretty wild to watch here as Warren's campaign has, mostly fallen apart. Rather than really going hard on progressive values and doubling down in that movement lane, the campaign's approach has seemed to be to go after Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And look, politically, it may be the right call, right? But especially after the attack that she launched on him about him being a secret sexist and all of that, it's just remarkable to watch the way she's sort of burning these bridges when he really hasn't said anything about her. Through this whole campaign, has he criticized her once? I can't think of a single...
I think he said, quote, she's a capitalist to her bones, and I'm not.
And I'm not.
Yeah.
But those are her words.
Yeah, right. I mean,
and so I find it sad. And then we also saw, with the culinary union, Warren took their side on
over
Medicare.
The Bernie Bros.
They were going, against Medicare for all, but she sides with them. She picks up this whole Bernie Bros narrative, which is now like kind of the core of her message. Is I can unify, with the unsaid part being like unlike these divisive Bernie Bro people over here. And I find it very disappointing.
She's a
personally.
cynical politician, and it came out in campaigns reveal who you are. There's nothing else like it.
And
it strips you down, and
that's why she's not performing either, because people saw that for what it is. That does it for us. We're going to be back later today for our own media critique segment, where we break down the week that was in media mishaps.
And tomorrow we're going to have another round of #RisingQs. See you then.